Did I go all over the place?
Oh, you touched on a lot of different things, and I have a lot of questions running through my head. But that's good because you touched when we talked before. You said like little bits and pieces, but now you like got I feel like a good chunk, probably not all of it, but you got a good chunk of the story out there, which is amazing, and it says a whole lot more. And and I think it's like really powerful for people to hear. One thing I would like to say is, though, like you kind of ended it on a kind of a question, like on a question part, on a question mark sort of thing. I would like to say, like reiterating what I said at the beginning, which is like you're a big part of the community here in town now. And if someone was, I'm willing to bet if I like most of the people on like the Chamber of Commerce and stuff like that, they probably don't know.
This is the first time somebody has asked me to share my story, and that's the first time I've told my story.
Yeah. So there we go. And like we've talked, when we talked before, here's some clarifying things I need to make sure we get out there too.
Yes.
Because you brought up a lot of points that I only know because I've been to prison, because I went to prison in Texas, and because I grew up in Houston, so I know a lot of things. But so I need to clarify some references. First off, Third Ward, that was the understatement of a lifetime that it's dangerous. Third Ward is one of the most dangerous areas in the country. For those who don't know, Third Ward is in Houston. It is like police will like avoid that area intentionally, leave it neglected, and kind of let it run wild. And they'll go in there, but it's like they go in there because like there's such an insane gang presence. There's so many things going on. I remember when I was locked up in Texas, people would flash like Third Ward all over the units because they were so proud of. They would say lived, I would say survived.
Yeah.
Third Ward. And people, I remember growing up in Houston, and they would always talk about, we were in Third Ward the other day, and oh my gosh, it was like they would talk about like I just barely got out of there. And so yeah, to be jumped and then left for dead basically in the middle of it at night, and being a young woman, that's an incredibly scary situation. So I definitely want to clarify that point. And the other part is TYC stands for Texas Youth Corrections.
Thank you. Yes.
And DOs are detention officers.
Thank you. Yes.
So when you're saying in TYC, there was a problem with the DOs raping people coming in.
Girls, yeah.
The girls coming in. They were talking about she's specifically saying Texas Youth Corrections, so Texas's system for handling juveniles who enter the criminal justice, enter corrections of any sort. As soon as they get any sort of sentence, they were having a severe problem with the young women getting raped, and young boys too. It didn't matter about gender. It was just about the youth being raped. One of the units I was at up in Hamilton, Texas, it used to be a TYC unit, and because of I can't be 100% sure, but they changed it over to a program unit, and I believe it's because they really lowered the number of juveniles they're taking into TYC now because of all of the horrible things they did, especially like in the 90s.
Yeah. So it was terrifying, and I'm so grateful I never went, because like I said, like if it wasn't, and my stepdad's he's 75 now, so he's 20 years older than my mom, and his son was right around the same age as my mom. So he's always questioning his purpose, and I'm like, I'm your purpose. Like if it wasn't for you and your finances and your support, because after I went to group home, I had to go back. I chose to go back to him. I had like learned my fucking lesson. I'm not going back to anybody but my safe stepfather. And my mom was still locked up, so I went back and I kind of started over with no clothes, like nothing. And he bought me every piece of clothing and just really gave me a setup for success and was there for me and is still there for me to this day, even though they're not married anymore. And then went through hell with me and my mom. And he marries, yes, he hired a call girl and like, yes, but fuck that. Like, he has redeemed himself in so many ways of, being there. He never cheated on my mom. He was there for her when she was locked up. He paid for all her lawyer fees, and she got a DWI during this time too. So when I was in group home, it was Mother's Day, and I hadn't seen my mom in a good amount of time, probably like a year. And she was going to come see me. She was getting released that day, and we had visitation for Mother's Day, so they'd made a special whatever for her to come and see me later that day. And I'll never forget the staff, I don't even know what to call them, but she was like, your mom got rearrested, and it was for that DWI. So it was like a hard, like, you think about abandonment and why we lash out in all these ways, and I'm just speaking for me, but I know there's thousands, millions of other people out there that just, they get so left behind. So by the time they're 18 and they're supposed to go to this real world, they've lived a whole life. They don't know where to put all this because everybody wants to talk about their shit. Nobody wants to ask you about your shit. And then when they start talking about their shit, you think, oh, my shit's a little bit deeper than their shit. I might not say my shit because my shit might be bigger than their shit and they might judge me. And that's the cycle that I get in because it's like, oh, damn, you think that? Like, and pain is pain.
Right.
But my story is, I feel shamed about it. And I feel like it's sometimes too much for someone to take in. So I know I'm talking for me, but millions of other girls, I'm kind of left with this, like, no validation for what happened, about, like, the pain, not validating my pain. And also I'm left with this, like, shame and these feelings of, you guys can share your stories because your stories are more known as normal and relatable, but I have to kind of dig deep and, like, push those down because if I, like, match your story with what I just said, like, that's not going to be relatable. So what do I do with all this?
Right.
And that's where I had to heal.
And it's hard. It's hard to talk, like, and I can relate to somewhat because, like, I have to watch myself because I can't just go out and say, someone asked me, oh, what were you doing in Texas? Why did you move? What happened? I can't just go, well, I killed someone.
Right.
Like, that's
It's
a
deep, it's
showstopper.
heavy. Yeah, it's show-stopping. Exactly.
It's a showstopper. And then I'm also, not only is it a showstopper, I've realized, like, I'm putting those emotions on them.
Yes.
And it's not fair to ask them to process them. And I try not to force that conversation. And I'm sure it's extremely difficult because you have an entire past, your family history, everything is all tied into it. And also, like, everything I do right now is wrapped around what I did. So I get it that, like, someone asks a simple question.
Yes.
And then it's like, well, let me think on that one.
What can I say that's not including all of this? Because, yeah, like, fast forward, my grandmother tried to do the same thing. Like, my grandmother was poisoned in my life. I have had to, set a boundary. And she came here, and we let her move in, and she completely destroyed us. Like, me and my mom had to work so hard to heal. So we had to kick her out. We had to put her on the streets, and it was that bad, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done because she was trying to teach my son what she tried to teach me. And luckily, like, the thing that's hard is that you can do every right decision to not let your kids go through what you went through. But if you have family poisoning your family,
yeah,
you can't. Like, you have to cut them off. And so that's what I mean. But, like, I'm still dealing with this shit today. And I'm trying so hard to be like, I'm normal. Like, no, I'm not. I refuse to let you bring me down. I refuse to let you bring me down. And my mom's still trying to process. And I think it's easy as a child to be like, I'm a victim. My grandmother was in prison. My mom was in prison. Now, that's why I went through all this. But that's a lie. I knew exactly what I was doing. I had a way out. And at the end of the day, like, we choose what we need to do every single, like, we build our lives. Fuck the past. And so it's hard to shift to being like, I'm a big girl and I have to make big girl decisions, even if it connects with the trauma that I'm still healing from way back when.
Right.
Right? So that's been a journey as well.
It's yeah. I can imagine. It's very different. I want to ask too, because like in your story with dealing with your mom, with your stepdad, you brought up the topic of like her starting the marijuana business and like it being in his name, but like I didn't like what ended up happening with that. What it sounded like, it kind of there might have been some consequences coming from that.
Yeah, so it all happened like all together. So the DUI and the marijuana charge and all that kind of happened at the same time. So she first violated on the marijuana, and so my stepdad, there was a plea deal. My stepdad spent like 24 hours in jail, and he got off on probation because his name was like on one electricity bill. And so she had an investor. And shout out to my mom, she didn't snitch on this man, and that's why she got all of the charge and the convictions. So when they violated her and she went back for the marijuana charge, she had to go to Beaumont and do this weird like shit where she was going into like they made her set up where she was with the feds, so they had her set up where she was going into like bars and trying to like get people to get ecstasy, and she was like, I haven't been in this area in like 10 years. I don't know what you want from me. So they were trying to get her to snitch on these people, but she ended up taking the charge. My stepdad got like a little bit of time in jail. They were on the news everywhere. He lost his job, all the things. And she just went back. So he was good. And there was a lot of other people involved. And like, I'm scared that anybody listens to this like gets nervous because I don't want anybody to like feel like I'm talking about them. But it all just basically came back to my mom and being charged because of not snitching. But you should snitch if it's gonna put you in jail. I'm just saying.
You saying you should snitch?
Yes.
Okay. Why? To explain that reasoning, because that's new one. That's a new one on me.
That's a good. See, okay, so I grew up with the mentality never snitch, and my mom still my grandmother and my mom have like OG gangsters in the terms of like never told on anyone. But I realized like so the story doesn't end right. So continue on and all the charge with my ex, my first love or whatever, and him getting locked up and whichever. There was people facing time, and I don't think, and they had to do that time because they wouldn't snitch. And like thinking back on that as a 16-year-old boy, he was 13, his friend that he got caught with was 16. You know, they both lives were taken away, but like that's a question. Do we owe them our life? Like, do we owe that person our life? Because if you don't snitch, you're going to. And you know, I respect my mom for the decisions she's made. And I don't know, like, so she got off, she was an ISP, which is something they have in Texas. It's like a 2-year thing.
It's a drug program that they have in Texas. Yes, and that's a state drug program, not like a private, not like a.
It's like assigned, like
yeah, it's assigned ISP, and I think that's ISP you do out like, it's like goes with probation or something, right?
Yeah, so that was for the DWI charge. So she served some time for the marijuana. The thing about the marijuana thing is that it was all really circumstantial. You know, we had my stepbrother telling my cop uncle or whichever, who then started the investigation. And I don't know how this all played out, and I should have called my mom before I got here, but they couldn't really pin her there. They did the investigation, and they got my stepdad because he was on the bills, and they were trying to go after the investor, but there was not really a solid case. And so that's why I don't think she got as much time as she would have with that violation, because I believe that she beat that charge, but because she violated parole, like she was involved in all this, that violated her. Then she got hit with the second charge, which was the DWI, which then she went, got rearrested, like didn't even let her out of jail, got charged again, and then went to that program. And then finished, got out, and still had her parole remaining till I was 18.
Okay.
It's messy, it's muddy,
It gets so. One thing I will say about from what I've heard about TYC is that juvenile charges can get really muddy, like they can get really prolonged and things like that. And whereas adult charges tend to be more clear cut
right.
overall. ISP is so one of the things I actually heard about ISP, I heard a lot of people talked about ISP a lot. They even talked about how like they're like, oh, you should be in the ISP because you had like it's your first charge, you should be there. And then I found out a lot of guys explained how ISP worked. And ISP is actually all about snitching.
Yeah.
It's all that's the whole point of the program is snitching. And so I to your point on should to snitch
or not
on
to snitch.
to snitch or not to snitch. I don't think it's as clear cut.
Nothing's black and white in life.
No, nothing's black and white in life. I do see very much value, and I think it is important to remember. Don't enable someone else to do something if it comes at the cost of someone who like of a bystander.
And that's if we look at the like 10,000 foot perspective. I saw a lot of my friends go in for things they didn't do because of no snitching. And we're young, right? We're just trying to like be the big bad wolf. And if you would have caught me at that age, fuck no, I've never snitched because that's how I was raised and that's what I watched happen. But now that I'm older, like if my son gets caught up in a murder and he didn't do it and he's about to get the charge, let's just say I just threw out the word murder. Do I want him to snitch or do I not? And that's like me having to look at my friends going through this and be like, I'm going to lose you. And I know somebody personally that's still in prison because of not snitching. So it's like they took my loved one.
Right.
You know?
That's a really that example you gave right there is that's just such a hard example because if he was caught up in a murder charge and then he has the option to snitch on someone else.
A plea deal, whatever, yeah.
On a plea deal, plea deal is one thing. Plea deal that will come up no matter what. But the part of the plea deal is you give out everyone who's involved, all that kind of stuff. And what that ends up doing is it will help him. But I've also met people who they were at the other end of the spectrum and the one like the co-host of the show, he did what he was in for a murder charge. The guy and basically the guy who did the brunt of the attacking got caught, and then the cops didn't know about Malone or anyone else was there. But the guy told him where to find him, told all that, and then he made parole first, and then gets out, and that's the nature of the deal. And and then it comes back to me to where this is the problem. Yeah. This goes and touches on we should be allowed to say, hey, there's an issue. We need to get you to someone who can help. And Texas is really awful about that.
Yes, definitely.
Like when it comes to, especially like treatment, ISP is not treatment.
It's not. My mom actually, like when she got out, she went to the news because it was such maltreatment.
Yeah.
They had women in chairs for like 24 to 48 hours. Like their ankles were swelling. That whole system you're talking about, like they wanted you to snitch. So my mom always said like she just dropped a note, like Martha like stepped on my foot, like something stupid. But that was the system they were creating. So and it goes back to juveniles and adults. Like how is that helping?
Yeah.
We get back into this real world. That's not how things work. It's not going to be a social norm to go tell on your coworker every day to your boss. That's not going to be acceptable. So where's the learning? It's a big power trip. I think it's like your ego is going to die today, and you're going to get out and have no self-worth, and you're going to have to live with that because you deserve it because you got in trouble. But like mentally, how is that helping us?
Right. Yeah.
Right.
It's, and you don't know, it's not helping. And the big thing is, no one is, a big part of your story is no one, like you talked about your friend who you were both struggling, you were both not at home. But one thing is there were, she was constantly getting offers for help and they were trying to get her somewhere where they could help. And versus you weren't feeling that and coming your way.
Yeah.
And if the problem is like, especially in Texas, it's not a thing. It's like, even the places where you can go get treatment, there's one of the biggest places where you can go get treatment in Texas. I can't remember what it's called, but it basically, the way it works is you spend 2 years in this place and they basically just break you down so they can build you back up. And they basically, every time you enter a room, someone just sits there, they line you up and they just degrade you. And then it's like, no,
there's better ways.
There's better ways.
There's definitely better ways.
There's better ways. And I know this because I've been to treatment in Colorado. That's where I went for treatment. And we had, so you were talking, the other thing you were talking about is like when you were in treatment and you had those groups and you're like you said, it's a great way to just go and meet people who have like other people who do exactly what you do.
Very relatable, yeah.
Yeah. And then you end up just basically now you have a drug network that you just made.
It's great.
And and when I was in treatment in Colorado, it could have been like that. Not only that, you could have like, there were people paying big money to get into the treatment facility I was at. So I could have been like, if I needed to sell money to pro level athletes, great. Now I have a hookup for whatever. The difference is that the people at the treatment there, they had eyes on everything and they were like making sure, like there was at one point someone who got in trouble for selling and doing all sorts of stuff. They're at the treatment facility and like it was in the 3 months I was there, that was an outlier. It was a huge outlier compared to what was normally going on, which was everyone was getting together, talking, and we were trying to work with each other and trying to look on ways to improve each other and try and work on each other. And the great part is they knew like if we get all of these guys together, they have a common experience. So they'll listen to each other. They may not listen to the counselors, even though most of the counselors had personal firsthand experience. This is like they might not listen to the counselors because they're in a position of authority.
Exactly.
But they'll listen to each other. And the best part is because they've all been through the same stuff, they're going to be really good at taking each other down.
There's some organization there. Like when I went to group home, there was no organization. They had just got busted for a staff member bringing in drugs, so they got shut down. And when they got reopened, that's when I went in, and we had a way smaller crew. But there was no organization. We couldn't sleep in the day. That was like, and then we ate. They fed us $70 a week. They gave for food, and we ate like potato. And that's another thing, like because I work in the fitness world, so the nutrition they were feeding us. I went from like 110 to like 140. I mean, just from potatoes and rice and beef, like constantly. And so, anyway, so then there was the company and the system is only as good as it's ran. So, what were you teaching us in this house? We beat the fuck out of each other. We hated each other because it's like 7 girls and we're all different, obviously. So we had like. And we had the favorite. So I was one of the favorites. So I got gifts on my birthday and like weird shit. But you had the girls that were absolutely crazy, and not because like, and I look at it as an adult now and I'm like, they were struggling so bad. They were going through suicidal thoughts and like we thought they were weird.
Yeah.
And the staff thought they were weird. So, but as staff as an adult, like you should know that that's more than being weird. And then we picked on them. So I think about the girls now, and I've lost contact with them because we were never that close. But I think about like the last time I heard from one, it was like we kept in contact with some of the staff, and me and this other girl that were in there, we still talk to this day. She was like, I keep running out in the road and trying to get ran over. Like, that's the last conversation we had with her. So it's like, you've already broke these women before they even had a chance.
Right.
There's no resources.
And that's breaking them. Yeah, the women come in broken. Like, everyone comes into treatment broken. They're like, they might still, I knew plenty of guys who came in and they still had this suave of they know exactly what they're doing. And there was my favorite line from treatment was there was a doctor, and they had men and women at our treatment facility, but they kept them separate. And then there was one class a day where they brought us all together, but men were on one half of the room and women were on the other half. And this doctor from CU is coming in and giving a lecture, which like she would get paid to do lectures across the country on like addiction and how it works and all this kind of stuff. And she's giving it to us. And she's giving this lecture, and she's sitting there and she's like, I'm sitting here giving you all this information and telling you how to save your lives. And the funny part is you think it's funny and like so unimportant that you're over there like shooting looks at each other when you think I'm not looking.
Yeah.
But you're sitting here flirting when you don't realize you're in the ER of this facility.
Right.
Like, you're in the ER right now, and you think it.
And you're putting a relationship above your sobriety.
Right. You think it's time to flirt with that freaking saline bag hooked into you right now.
Right.
And it's like, no, you don't realize how bad you are right now, the fact that you're even here.
You can find Shakedown merch, graphic novels, and other projects at waywordpress.com. That's WAYWORD press.com. If you would like to support The Shakedown, get exclusive content, and watch episodes live, you can support us at patreon.com/The Shakedown. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment to give Malone that inner peace he so richly deserves.